that. Since I just started the recording, this is Rich Pendergast for the Town of Alliance WPCA. Hello. In the, I think we're in the mezzanine room. The mezzanine room of the town hall. We had to change rooms for another meeting that had more people. I have Andrea Lombard, Rob McCarthy, Steve Erwitz, Dmitry Tolchinsky, and Steve Tsunami. Online, we have Erica, who is our clerk, taking minutes. We also have some members from the public. So I also want to say that Brad Yerkes has been excused from this meeting. And there's some other members that maybe they're en route or they're trying to get online. Anyways, we're going to start. The meeting agenda is approval of minutes from August 8th, update on budget and expenses, Carmody, our software for septic systems. We have a mailing reminder update. We also have a Soundview Serial and Miscellaneous Area B project update, focusing on clean water funding application status and status of additional funding. We'll then get into correspondence, new business, public comment, and adjournment. Okay, so first off is approval of minutes from August 8th, 2023. Can I get a motion to accept those minutes? Dimitri made a motion. Can I get a second? Steve made a second. Open discussion about those minutes. Any edits, changes, updates? Okay, I'm not hearing any, so I'll call for a vote to approve the meeting minutes. Since this is a hybrid, I'm gonna call out the staff here that approve. So all those in favor of approving the minutes, please raise your hand. So we have Rob McCarthy, Steve Erwitz, Dmitry Tolchinsky, and Steve Tsunami approved it. That's a majority. And Andrea abstained. That's okay. You're allowed to do that. So those minutes are approved. Going to the next item, we go to the budget update and expenses. We had Andrea, I don't know if I'm gonna try and turn my camera so a little bit, so not so much that you can be seen, but also that you can be heard, because the microphone is where the camera is.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So my budget report is not a spreadsheet this month. I just want to kind of explain, we've had some transitions and shuffling, and I think it's important to just frame that for everyone in the committee. So we have a new finance director who just came at the end of August. Her name is Anita Manzi, and I did have a chance to connect with her several times. Amy is replaced, Amy who did payroll and accounts receivables for the WPCA. The new position is filled by Tracy Beebe, and so we have a lot of ramping up basically with the new budget year. So the payroll was completed. Steve received his paycheck. I did connect with Carmody and spoke directly with them. They have not received their check yet, but they're working on getting that processed, and he completely understands the transition because he's going through one himself, moving his company. So that worked out really well. The other news about the budget is our carry forward for the 35,000 in legal and the 37,000 in project consultant will be presented to the finance committee on the 19th at the 7 o'clock meeting. But our surplus before 2022 was returned to the surplus budget as we had directed. So we'll know about that our carryover request for the next month.
I want to note that Randy Nixon has joined. He's a WPCA member. Thank you for joining, Randy. Just to clarify, the first selectman is going to present our budget and ask me questions about, just confirming what we already submitted. And why. And the reason why we're doing carryover is because we expect some bills to come in that we expected last year. So that's why we're carrying over some money and not releasing other money. We also will not spend money unless we're required to spend money. We're not gonna spend money for fun. So, and I made that point to the first selectman so he can make that point to the board of finance. Is there anything else, Andrea?
No, that's all I have to say. There's just a lot of things.
Good evening, everybody. Sorry I'm late.
Thanks for joining us, Randy. You didn't miss much. We approved the minutes and we're just talking about the budget. Any questions about our budget status so far?
I just want to clarify something. I know that Andrea's doing a great job, but I didn't get a paycheck. I got a reimbursement check for the plans and specs.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's,
Same payroll. and I didn't do that. It's,
Sorry.
she processes a ton.
yes, Steve is a volunteer and gets paid nothing.
Yeah, thanks, that correct. Yeah.
We all are volunteers.
Buddy,
Well, Randy,
I charge a lot more than that.
thank you.
Randy, can you confirm that you can hear, Steve when he was talking and Andrea when she was talking?
Yes.
Okay. Randy, if I could ask you to, if you, hear someone talking, part of the conversation and you can't really hear it, to interrupt and let me know, and I'll try to repeat it or move the microphone closer to the person speaking.
Okey doke.
Thank you. See, that's what happens when you do online, Randy, you get extra jobs. So now I'm gonna move into the next line item, the community service options, reminder, the mailing update. Where I know and what I've known is the update is we have asked the tax assessor to refresh the properties and to put those properties in some kind of file formats, given it to Carmody. Carmody does this process of refreshing the database. So if there's a new owner that owns a property, they get the right mailing address. That, we have not confirmed that Carmody is finished with that. We expect that to be finished in a week or two, although it's not something I'm in control of, or we're in control of. Once that is update from Carmody, we're gonna print out the list of those properties that need a reminder. And we have the former WPCA clerk who has some specific experience is going to check over the list to see if there's some issues of problems. And that will probably, that's Jen Datum, that's probably her last thing that she'll do. It's partly also training. I think Erica, she's gonna be giving you some guidance.
Meeting with them tomorrow.
Okay, excellent. So I don't know if you heard that. And then from there, those postcards will go out as reminders to residents to encourage them to pump out and remind them of the town ordinance of pumping out every 7 years. And there will be expense coming for this. We have, it's a mailing charge, a printing charge and so forth. So when we get those expenses finalized, they'll go through we'll get an invoice and we'll go through the process of paying them. Through our budget of mailing and postage and such. Did I miss anything, Andrea or Steve, on that postcard thing?
Oh, I just have a question. How often do we update the list of Carmody?
Once a year.
Once a year?
We can do it more, but once a year is included, so. And we do it before we send out a reminder.
And is it, we give them like the full town list and they just upload the new list?
Yes.
Okay.
So what they do is they match the printing, the addresses to the address. Because some people have two addresses or they have different instructions, and it's also a person. So if someone sells their house, that's what it's doing. It's just
Yeah.
updating it.
Okay.
Obviously, there's some weird stuff that happens, like people owning two lots, or, sometimes they switch to trust or something like that, So Jen wants to take a look at it to see if there's something that's off. And the idea is that effort, as I understand it, will save us from sending a postcard, like 5 postcards, when we pay for that to the same person. For those who try to have 5 postcards in one envelope, as an example. Which I would appreciate the extra effort and smart, doing that. It saves the town money to think that way. I'm gonna move on to the next item, which is 2 parts. And it's long-winded, and there's gonna be a motion I'm gonna request on part of this. So the clean water funding, the Soundview Sewer Project miscellaneous area B, clean water funding application status. We have in our correspondence, kind of the lengthy instructions, and I'm gonna dig into this a little bit more detail tomorrow. We have, I'll give you an example from the state. We've done this before. We've done this in the initial part of the design review, in the 30% design review, and now we're doing it for 60%. We did it at 60% to submit the application. Now that we want money, we need to do it all over again. Not very efficient, if you ask me, but we have documents of agreements we have to sign and authorize. We have signings to witness that each copy of the agreements, we have to do the town seal on a copy of agreement. We have our bond agents filling out the application with the money in the right, parts of the application. We have done, that part has been done, but it's drafted. It has to be approved by us. The first selectman will do all this as far as signing and having the town clerk emboss it and so forth. For us, it's just a progress update, and for me, I'm just pushing through the paperwork and getting the people that have to do their part to do their part. What this is for, I mentioned in the last meeting, is the 60% of our design funding. So 60% of our design review has been completed, but they won't give us the completion until we fit this application and request money. There is some new item that comes up out of this. We need a bank account to accept the money. I don't have a bank account for the WPCA that I'm aware of, but I will request the finance person and copy the treasurer and the vice chair and say, what do you want to do? Traditionally, here's a question for discussion. The WPCA are the owners of this. I propose that we have the WPCA and a town first selectman and the finance person, the finance director, have authority on these, this bank account. That is a question and a suggestion, and the idea is it's paid professionals versus a volunteer. We also, I think we're gonna do is we're gonna have an audit of the account once a year at least, independent audit. And the idea is to protect all those involved or to stop any fraud that might potentially happen. So I just made a mouthful. I don't know, does anyone have any comments or concerns or issues or suggestions? WPCA members, by the way.
Hey, this is Randy. I would suggest we open a bank account, and I'm not sure exactly how to do that for the WPCA, but we certainly should do that so that we have the ability to take money in and pay money out. So
We technically have to, as part of we have to give that as part of the application. So we definitely have to. So I thank you, Randy. Steve, you have your hand up. You want to say something?
Yeah.
Could you speak up just to make sure? Go ahead.
I'm curious on, I don't care if the first I don't know, I'm unclear why you would want the first, anyone from the town as a part of the account holder.
Well, I'm not an expert on this. but our referendum allows the first selectman to sign and implement things to do sewers, to even pay bills. So he's authorized to make payments and sign agreements and so forth. So someone's gonna have to sign for this bank account. Now, the alternative is it's a completely private WPCA and the finance director. But
Well, wouldn't it be the treasurer and the president and the chairman?
I would think, I would want to have two people for sure, in case somebody goes on vacation, which I like to do someday. So, yeah, I mean, go ahead. So I think I saw Dimitri, then Rob. Dimitri, you have a comment?
I think we should just ask people from other towns, like this line, how they can do
They have a utilities director. They have a permanent position.
it. I think we would need,
I am not prepared to hire a utilities director.
no,
So-
when time comes, because they sewer is here, already installed. And people should pay money to the town. Just 2%. Yeah.
So Dimitri's saying, I'm just gonna paraphrase, people will pay money to the town, they will pay money to, well, actually, the WPCA to pay back the loans that taken out. But the loans are, they're gonna be signed off and the backstop is the town that owns the loans.
So therefore, you would need to have people.
Well, that is a question that we need to do. We, and the previous finance director refused to say that she was very clear, she was not going to support any sewer financing and told us we had to get our own. The new one may change her mind. To me, it's just another bank account. As far as assessments go and sending out assessments, we do need to talk about that, but not today. Today, we need to do a bank account and have a name on the bank account. So before Steve, Rob, you had your hand up. Did you want to make a comment?
Just, I've had experience with just like putting on the account that they can.
Yeah. Yeah. So you'd want someone to be,
I'm not sure I'm supportive of it. But I can change that too. So it's complicated, but that talk about this.
I just let me respond back and I'll get to Steve. I was just wondering about the thing with the selectmen's bond referendum has the ability to sign these things. And the idea was the town would do the loan and to get started. And then once we got the loans and we go from permanent, temporary loans to the permanent loan obligation, that's when it switches over to WPCA sends money out and collects money in and. So, all right, Steve, go ahead.
So my experience, working for WPCAs is that there are two ways towns format their WPCAs. One is that they fall under the Department of Utilities, like East Lyme does. Waterford has their own WPCA, with a director, and all their employees. It's separate. When I receive checks from the town of East Lyme, it's the town of East Lyme. When I receive checks from Waterford, it's the Waterford WPCA. Because we don't have a director of utilities, I would think we would probably want to be an autonomous account. It's going to be an autonomous account in any event.
Well,
In the future, I would say the treasurer, I would say the treasurer and the chairman have to co-sign all checks over, a certain amount, $1,000 or whatever. Our practice now is that anything that comes in gets approved via chairman and
one
the
other
treasurer.
officer.
Right.
I have an informal rule of two of us.
Right, so I mean, having a check written would, anything over a certain amount should be co-signed, by, and put in
So
the-
let me,
the
just,
account,
let me just,
the chair and treasurer, so that you don't have to list.
I'm not in favor of co-signing each check.
Well, I'm not in favor of co-signing each check. But when construction begins, you're gonna be signing checks of millions of dollars a month. And there should be a check.
I hope it's not millions a month. There are thousands, yes, but not millions.
Really? Then you're in for a surprise.
Well, if our project, our part is 6.5 million,
Yeah.
okay, 6 months, okay, I'll do 6 months of millions, but
It's a lot of money a month.
yeah, yeah.
That's
It's
almost,
big
but it's only
stuff.
one check. It's only one check, but.
Well, I mean, if the reason why I wasn't in favor of co-signing two people co-signing is it's just logistically difficult to get people together.
Right, so well, I'm saying you put an amount.
Yeah.
Not every check. I mean, I would expect Carmody, I'd put them on automatic payment that you just take it out of the account. Not, I wouldn't do that, you know,
No,
but I mean, that has to get paid. Everyone knows it. It's not a big surprise. One
Yeah.
person can sign that. So, I mean, but, Rob has a good point also. If you start putting other people on that need to sign it or have the ability, to, I mean, if they have the ability to sign, I guess you could list them as a signee. of check.
normally the treasurer writes the checks.
Right.
Is what I've seen from different places. The treasurer writes the checks, but there's an approval or submittal process, and we could do that. We could have the treasurer write the checks after it's documented approval.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, usually you could either do it up front via approving invoices, and then she just does the last step, which is write the checks against the invoices, or the checks have to be approved, you know, but.
So I went into this totally thinking that we needed the director and and we don't. And legally, the WPCA's are set up in the state of Connecticut to have that separation on purpose. What I was explained to me in the research I've done and what I've been told by the DEEP is to prevent the town from taking all the WPCA funds and then not having enough money to fulfill their obligations of sewer treatment plant. and the maintenance. Yes, Dimitri.
Have a private user. Like, communities, like, Oakland Beach,
Yeah,
Miami Beach, they have their own view to people.
yeah, and the way they handle it, or at least I know of one association, the way they handle it is the treasurer writes the checks.
Yeah, that should be, and some money to come to the town, too. I get it.
Well, that's another can of worms. You know, if town-owned property is gonna send in assessment money, if that's returned, let's put that aside, because the key thing we need to figure out is bank account.
What I'm trying to tell you is that we have to think about the future, how it would be. This would be to think about money.
Well, for us to get the money for the design part, we need a bank account.
Can I make a motion?
Yeah,
I'd like to make a motion to authorize Andrea, the treasurer of WPCA, to open up a bank account that has the chairman and the treasurers as authorized signees. And
and the vice chair.
sure. And, yeah, any officer. And,
Could I make a suggestion?
come up,
Hold on, Randy, it's the middle of a motion. Technically, you try to be clear with your motion.
right, and then develop a procedure for paying bills.
Okay, so that was a long motion, and I appreciate the effort. Right now, we're in, from a process point of view, we need a second, and then we have an open discussion and we vote on it. So Randy raised a question, but at this point right now and we need a second. So Robert, you're making a second? Okay, open discussion. Randy, did you want to say something related to this?
But I was just gonna say that in other situations, not WPCA's, but in other organizations, with whom I've been involved, you need a bank account, and normally the treasurer, you would set a limit on checks that the treasurer could write, and we can, as a group, decide on what's reasonable for that. But let's say it, for the matter of argument, it's $500. Anything more than that, it requires a motion from the chair or the vice chair if the chair is not present, and we make a motion and we vote on it to approve writing a check for $25,000 or
I think that's,
$300,000.
I think that's an excellent plan, Randy. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry. Did you have more to talk about?
No, but to me, that's what I would do. Let's establish a bank account. Andrea's doing a really good job with that. Let her write checks for, small amounts of money that we owe people. And then when money comes in, it comes in through her and to the checking account. And when we write checks of any significance, so we set a threshold amount, and then that requires a motion for approval. That's what I would do. Keep it simple.
So, Randy, before I move on to my discussion point, I think you make an excellent point, and I think that's a separate motion we should deal with after this motion. I would ask a simple question. Are you up to the task Andrea, or do you agree to try to go get a bank account?
I do, but I have a couple questions.
Okay,
So,
so we're still in the discussion for this motion, just so we're, go ahead.
I mean, I have no trouble trying to establish a bank account, with the officers on it. But I definitely need to know the process of how we do that in the town of Old Lyme. I've done it for other boards, but I haven't done it for a commission for the WPCA of the town of Old Lyme. So I do agree we need to do that. And would the only funds in this account be the clean water funds, or are we then going to ask the town to transfer our budget over, and then we take control of all of our accounts receivable and all of our bills, because it really is.
The second part of that question is no.
Okay, because
the
then
town-
now I have two accounts.
Rob, I think you have some experience with this. The way the town does, if they give us, a part of our budget, they give us money, it goes out for our expenses. Anything that comes back or like a discount or payment goes not to the WPCA, but to the town. We could put in a line item of our budget, funding money to our bank account. And that's something that we would be in our budget, that would go from our budget into the banking account, but we don't take over completely funds. We are getting to the point of managing the equipment and the infrastructure and that kind of stuff from the loans. So the first part of your question about the process, I don't know there is a process other than go to the bank.
You're
The
most
people
likely,
that I've talked to so far are so new.
right, so
Well, we haven't had a bank account, so we don't have a WPCA process.
I would
for bank account.
suggest that you bring the governing document from the town that gives the WPCA authority to operate.
Yeah.
If you're going in with an LLC, you need the founding documents.
You're gonna need money too.
I was gonna say, we talked about it, budget or something.
Right.
Need some seed money for the town.
Yeah.
Right.
$5.
No, it's usually, it might be a couple hundred, or maybe even like 500 or 1,000.
So that's why I asked about the budget.
So there's a miscellaneous item in the budget, and
Right.
that would be a perfect.
Start, I think.
So we can do a motion after this one to talk to Randy's, and then a motion to do the funding the account, and it'll be organized.
Right, we might need like a reporter. Yeah.
We don't even have a.
Right,
Well,
well, it would be,
Yeah.
we would need it, it's a tax exempt organization. Yeah, Andrea, let me try to find some information, maybe I'll call someone up from WPCA and ask them. All the WPCA.
You can also,
New, but they do have tax exempt, number. Well, they have a tax number that shows that they're a nonprofit organization, and that's what they give me when I'm doing work to put down, so I don't pay taxes on the materials that I'm purchasing. So we'll probably have to apply for one of those also with the state.
Well, I know we have a tax ID number now, and we have an account number through the town of Oakland.
I
So,
don't know if we.
WPCA has a tax ID number?
well,
I
through the
didn't-
town of Oakland, but then we have an account number under our,
That's the town's account. number.
Right, that's,
I think what Steve is talking about
so
is
we're forming a
new
separate.
federal tax ID.
yeah,
So that means we're on our way to forming a separate.
But the motion is to open a bank account and for you to figure it out. So you do
Okay.
the research.
Yes.
We're still in this motion still. Do we care what bank?
That's what my next question was.
well, I'm thinking of moving my accounts away from Webster. They just did a merge with, and it's impossible. They're holding checks for weeks. They become very,
They are right now in merger acquisition hell because I know the vice president of the bank and she's going nuts.
it
But-
has not been a good experience.
You know, this is a very,
Why would the
Probably
WPCA
better.
represent the bank and not the treasurer?
we can probably ask, you could research it. Yes, but
BOA is probably,
Can we use a credit?
well, no,
you need a bank. I need a bank account. Let's go back to the basics.
All right.
I don't think I think the insurance is different on credit union bank.
Depends on-
But, I would look at any bank that's relatively easy to get to.
Couple questions. I would also look, so we have checkbooks. It's gonna say WPCA Town of Oakland. That's the name of the account that we're gonna be
Well-
using.
Look at the forming document to see how everything has to match.
You don't want a credit card with that? No, just,
Yes,
yeah.
you want a debit card or something, I mean, and you want to do checks. We're mainly gonna be sending out checks, but I can
Yeah.
imagine there's a need to use a debit card. So are we done with the discussion? Is there more comments on this motion? Okay, I'm gonna call for a vote. Does everyone understand the motion or do we want Erica to try to play it back or Steve, you want to play it back?
We'll want to have it.
Erica, you're on the spot now. Do you think you could, reply back what it was?
Yeah, here's what I have, and let me know if I missed anything, Steve. Steve Tsunami made a motion to authorize Andrea Lombard, treasurer of WPCA, to open a bank account with chair and vice chair as authorized signers and develop a procedure for payments.
Treasurer, chair, and vice chair.
So it's the officers.
It's the officers.
The three officers.
Yep, that's what I have.
Does everyone understand the motion? Okay. All those in favor in this room, please raise your hand. Randy, how do you vote? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, the motion carried. Let the notes say that everybody in this room has voted yes, and Randy voted yes. Motion carries. The next motion, Randy, I don't know if you want to propose what you suggested in the discussion, which I think was a limit of requires permission or approval, any checks written above a certain amount.
Prior to?
Sure, we're in a discussion mode, no motion has been made.
I think the procedure that I was referring to, that Andrew's gonna develop under the last motion would cover that.
Okay,
I would agree.
so,
I would agree with that, Steve. All I was trying to say is that every time we get a small bill or a small receipt of funds or whatever that may be, there won't be many small receipts, but small bills, it shouldn't have to be an act of Congress for everybody to sign off on that. So Andrea should have
yeah,
the ability to look after this. So I think Steve is right that if we develop a procedure, we could review that maybe at the next meeting and approve it.
Yeah, and that, approving that procedure will be a motion, which would make it a fact that you have to follow that procedure.
Correct.
And I will say that New London, they do that. Their meetings, their WPCA meetings are approving big bills. And they do it lightning speed. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. Yeah, they have paid professionals that have more time to work on it than we do. There was a third motion idea, which was presenting a motion of some amount of money from our miscellaneous fund or some other fund to seed the bank account. Would someone like to make a motion, something like that?
I'll make a motion to seed the bank account with $500 from miscellaneous funding in our current fiscal year budget.
Seconded, Rob McCarthy seconded. All those in favor? Oh, wait a minute, sorry, discussion? Any discussion?
I do have a discussion. So in my understanding on how we're working now, the budget, that means I would write a check for $500 and then submit for reimbursement. Because I don't have a checkbook with the current budget.
You could also request a check from the finance director after submitting, saying, I need a check to open a bank account,
Okay.
if you like.
So either way would work, but
Either way would work.
definitely we have trouble moving funds sometimes.
I would ask them, I would give them an invoice from the WPCA.
You could do that, or you could send them an email.
And have Rich and you approve that.
We have
Or
a,
you can get it.
yeah, but we're doing it because we have the motion recorded. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Randy, how do you vote, yes or no?
Yes.
Let the record show that everybody in favor in the meetings was favored yes, and Randy said yes. It's unanimous vote, motion carries. Okay. Now I think we're done with the application part. And now we're in the agenda that talks about the status of additional funding and grant applications.
One quick question. When
Yeah.
is this to be done? Like tomorrow?
We did not send a date.
Yeah, I mean, but like, what is the clean water fund send?
Well, we're
Like to have.
Yesterday. Okay.
Yeah.
I would think you could do it on Saturday, if you do a little research and you want to actually physically go to the
Well,
bank, if you.
so ID number might be the whole thing.
Yeah, that might, you might go to the bank and be one visit to find out, 2 visits to complete. But
I'll make calls tomorrow.
we need the bank account on the application, and we're going through the application. And to give you a time frame, when we did this in the past, when we had everything up ready, which we're not, but hopefully by Friday we'll get ready. Then this first selectman will get into a schedule.
And we're nonprofits.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're not making any money. Is there any other questions before I move on? I don't know if Alan. Okay.
Oh, we're considered a government entity.
Right.
We're considered a government entity.
Right, I was looking at that.
Okay,
Well,
all right, hold on, let's go back to the meeting. So the next item on the agenda is the additional funding. And so we got a letter from the Department of Environmental Energy Protection. We had conversations, but we finally got a letter. And the letter says, and I'm gonna paraphrase, we're willing to give you up to $15 million in additional funds in the form of a forgivable loan. Up to the maximum of 50% total eligible costs. This is 25% for the clean water funds that we already have grant. That's very common. An additional 25% up to the maximum of 50 or 15 million. And there's a requirement for us to follow a affordability evaluation. And I'm going to paraphrase the affordability evaluation as 2% of the median household income, an OLON, which is that much cost per year. So this requires us to take a look at our estimates and the Private Beach Association estimates for the shared resources part and for the collection, their own particular collection for the financing charges and the O&M, which I think is operation and maintenance. That includes process treatment. It includes basically everything. So you throw everything together and then divide by the number of residents that'll be affected by this, the EDUs. Before I go any further, there's more to this, but does everyone have any questions so far? Okay, so this is somewhat the strange part. We have drafted this evaluation. We got Excel formats and from the state and really wasn't workable. And they said we could change it, whatever we want. We have then edited this and just put in the Soundview and Old Colony part because the Soundview and Old Colony are very similar type services, areas, number of houses and such, as far as linear feet and topography of structure. We used these same numbers for Miami and Old Lyme Shores, realizing that those properties or those neighborhoods are more expensive. And we're at the stage now of, that's the first draft, and now adding in the correct or updated amounts. These are backed by the bids that were done last time. There's an index that they told us to use that I'm not familiar with, but they told our engineering firms to use. And what it does is it brings the dollars equivalents to 2024 dollars from the previous bid estimates. So I think it's 2018 to 2024 dollars. And I think I'm forgetting something else. The big thing is it's a yes or no issue. So it's not, well, one neighborhood is affordable and one's not. Together as the project, since there's a shared resources, I believe since it's a shared resource, but what they said on the phone call is you put it all together and the average affordability is not affordable, then you get the $15 million. It's not a scenario where you get enough of the $15 million to make it affordable. Does that make sense? It doesn't make sense in the business world, but it's what the state did, and they're following the Clean Water Financial Act Capability Assessment Guide, and which is written by the EPA.
So one thing I was surprised at was if it's deemed unaffordable, even by $1, you're open to another 25% funding. So they're not going to make up the difference of the affordable ability to they're not going to make up the unaffordability.
You and I both thinking from a business point of view that's exactly not how we would expect it to roll, but we asked that specifically.
And they said,
and they specifically responded. We were wrong and they were right. It's possible it could change when they see it. But I mean, it's so like the affordability number is like $2,777 per year. If our affordability exercise says it's $2,780, we get 15 million. We don't get like just $2 per resident per year. or something like that. So,
It's a
But-
yes or no.
but you
It's a
know,
qualificator. It's a qualifier.
but I don't think it's gonna be close at all, because just that the back of the rough draft, we're already unaffordable without Old Lyme Shores and Miami Beach that have significant challenges financially. I think it'll put more. And we're working on this, and the state, you know, made us wait basically a year to give this information. They gave us this letter and then said, you have 45 days. I don't think there's really a time limit. As people know, last year, the state got $59 billion for this fund. And
59 billion?
59 billion. They all were high-fiving each other and excited about it. So they have money for this. No, we didn't. The
Well, I don't
state of
think
Connecticut.
Connecticut got 59.
That's what they reported. It's out there.
That's
Ned
statewide.
Lamont- Yeah, Ned Lamont was praising it. Senator Murphy, Blumenthal, everybody was saying how great it is.
But that's statewide,
Yes, it is statewide.
right?
It is statewide.
What's the budget?
And why would we ever think that anything that made business sense would make state government sense? So,
Yeah, that's all true. That's, you know, so what we're doing is we're going through this exercise. There is a couple wrinkles. We had gotten an update from Wood and Curran about operating costs for all the projects. If you remember, Wood and Curran originally did their wastewater plan for all the projects. And then we just focused on Soundview and miscellaneous area B. The private beach associations have another engineering firm, and that engineering firm wants, I think, $3,000 to $5,000 as a retainer to give them an estimate. In addition to whatever else they charge. The private beach associations, one beach association is demanding that they use that engineer firm. The other two are not. It remains to be unseen what's gonna happen. But our plan is to get a draft of this affordability thing to the state and then see what kind of questions they might have. What we can present is the bids we got in the past and how much it costs and the estimates from the engineering firm about the operation and maintenance costs. And then we have the IMA costs that we know that are in contract. And if we do the IMA contract costs between low, average, and full consumption, because our IMAs have a volume that we use, but historically, no one uses the high volume. Anyways, we have to present those costs to the state and see what they say.
I have a question.
Yes.
But we don't have full design here. How could we have an estimate or 60% of the design?
We have not gone out to bid yet, correct. So Dimitri said we don't have an estimate, we don't have a design. Old Colony is very comparable as far as linear square foot
Yeah.
and properties. So we're using Old Colony as an estimate and disclosing that. The state did not seem to say that we had to go out to bid before they would give us this money.
Last Saturday, on Colony Beach, and I remember. And they said that they're gonna have new instruments.
Well, they're planning on going out to bid again.
Yeah.
They're also, the requirement is not to go out to bid for this affordability index. The requirement is to give the state an estimate.
Yeah,
So we don't know if they said we don't have to go out to bid for the private beach association. Again, they are planning on doing it. Because for them to proceed, the bids that they went out to already have expired. And the idea is maybe if they go out to bid, the price will come down.
that's right. We don't have to put 45 days on cannot get another.
No, but the state's not requiring a rebid, they'll use those numbers.
But what if in case the new needs, the money law, for higher than three?
Well, if they're higher or lower, we'd have to go to that point. This next step is to say, we qualify for 15 million.
They cannot be more than 15 million.
I think they might, but they said they won't. If we go out and we say it's still unaffordable, even with the 15 million,
17.
we need 17 million is what they originally offered.
Yeah. Football.
17. So we go out to submit a successful unaffordable index to lower our project costs and for the residents, we get to 15 million. Then we have to go through a more meticulous estimate of what it costs per resident. And then we also have to figure out, do we have to go to referendum again? Or do beach associations have to go to referendum again? One beach association says that they have to go out to referendum if anything changes, which is a very strange referendum. So if it's free, they have to go out to referendum. If it's less expensive than the referendum, they have to go out to referendum. It seems a little strange because no one knew the exact amount, but that's what they say. So there's a number of steps going along here, and we are taking the next step. Yes, Rob, go ahead, Rob.
Getting bids sometime in the future, that are actually lower. And then so the state put that back to the equation, it's like, oh, this is affordable, I'm giving you.
It's possible that there makes some logic into what, so I'll just repeat what Rob said. If we go out to bid and the project is much less expensive,
We're not gonna get it.
will it now be affordable and we don't get it? So the purpose of this additional funding is to make it affordable. So if it's affordable, it's affordable. If it's not affordable, we get additional funds. So it's possible what you say could happen. I suspect when we throw in the two other, it's gonna be way unaffordable.
It's like, and then it's not gonna come that much cheaper.
It's
affordable.
It might come down.
It might, maybe. My experience, bids don't come down, they just don't go up as fast. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it does come down. So the representatives of the beach associations are working on the thing. I'm working on it. I've included Steve. And we have logistics. So to solve it, and I don't know if it's the thing where our submittal wants to be involved and be a committee member, but we don't have the time, to be quite honest. So the concerns maybe you're thinking about, like, what if we submit it? How do we carve up the money? If we get 15 million? What the state has said, we'll use the existing cost sharing agreement. For percentages, there is some drama between the other beach associations where they want to use a different method, but it comes out to the same. Like they want to do equal share of the shared part. And I'm fine with that if it completely pays it, but I'm not fine with owning 29% of the cost and getting 25% of the benefit. So, but we're not there yet. And the state said, first, see if you're unaffordable. Then the second, we think you should do that. And that's where I was talking about the steps. I don't see any downside for submitting an application to say, can you give us more money? There's no strings attached. There's no obligation. We're already obligated to do this sewer project unless it's not affordable. So, any other comments, questions from the WPCA members before I go into the IMA thing? Okay, I'm now going to move into the IMA extension with East New London. So our IMA with New London expired September 1st, 2023. And it had language in there saying if there's no fault of ours, they would renegotiate. And we thought that they'd extend it. They should have extended it. A good neighbor would extend it. In my opinion, they're getting millions of dollars from the sewer projects and they're not spending any money. It's going right to the pocket because they have too much over capacity. But they demanded more money. They demanded, and we used our political contacts to pressure them to get us a good deal. Their initial request was ridiculous in some people's minds. But we got to this place now where we are essentially, for the town's part, we have to pay a $10,000 deposit, which we had to pay the last time to form the agreement. Our share of the legal expenses to write an amendment. $32,102 in buy-in costs, an additional amount. And go from 2% to 2.5% financing, which brings the new cost of the financing over 20 years, including the $32,000 to $78,632 for the town. The beach associations had to pay equal share. So represents a 5% increase in buy-in and a 2 to 2.5% increase in financing. I would like a motion to accept this amendment. The beach associations are doing the same thing. They're looking at their committees to see if they can accept it. We told New London we'll agree to this and we'll go through, the process of approving it. New London has agreed to this. With a little bit of help from some of our political leaders. Putting this there. So before we get into a motion, does anyone have any questions about what I said?
You've been negotiating at the table. How do you feel about what's been negotiated?
The way I feel about it, from a principal point of view, we shouldn't have to do this. From a neighborly thing, we shouldn't have to do this. It doesn't seem right. But had we started paying, we would have been paying this amount of money. So we're basically putting this year's amount of expense that we would have paid for the buy-in into the buy-in, and we get, I forgot to mention, we have a 5-year extension. So we bought ourselves 5 years by paying 1 year and financing it over 20 years. So I feel this is a business decision that I would make if it was a business decision, because we can't go forward without it. And it's, when you look at a scale of a $43 to $50 million project, it's insignificant. That's how I feel. Steve, do you want to make a comment or a question or?
Yes, like you, I haven't really seen great backup of why they're increasing interest charges and whatnot. It's more money to borrow now than it was when we originally signed, but they're not really borrowing the money. They're using.
They're financing
They're
us.
They're financing their fee to us. They're not actually borrowing the money and giving us.
No, they're not borrowing any money.
So
They're financing us instead of getting it all at once.
Right, so the thing is you're right, and as a business decision, I did ask Rich to look at, why don't we just start paying our yearly fee, but it would be more money than to renegotiate and do it this way. So with that in mind, I would support it. I'm not real happy with the way New London has handled it, but I don't think there's anything better we're gonna get.
If something ever happens with this project, is there a resolution clause?
I don't know, I'm not sure what you mean. If we don't do this, if we lose our deposits,
Okay, we lose.
but we don't have a termination fee or leaving the, like, it's like, not like a merger where you have to pay to leave.
So we lose 10,000.
We lose 20.
Because
We've paid 10
We paid 10 already.
and we'd have to
now we
pay another 10 to.
And these are deposits though. It goes again.
It goes, the deposits go toward what we have to totally pay. And we're gonna find out about this additional funding and the project feasibility before we make the payment. Well,
And it comes out of the water fund, or this comes out of,
this is not a clean water fund.
this comes.
We don't
out
get
of-
reimbursement for this.
So what budget does this come out of?
It comes out of our operating budget. So when we, well, no, when we start the project, we start paying. And when we start the project, we send out the first sets of assessments. And residents can pay it, their entire assessment off, or they can start making payments. And the payments coming in go to the payments like this going out. So I have a pro forma that explains all that says money coming in, money going out.
Will get complicated fast.
No. No, it's,
Subtraction.
yeah,
I know, it's gonna be a-
yes.
Yep.
You said would be good for 5 years,
The extension it's an extending for another 5 years.
so I think it's fair. 5 years, we will get.
Yeah, I conceive us running this forward or abandoning or shelving the project within 2 years. I mean, I think, I think so we'll have our design bids and all that, and we'll have this additional funding maybe in a month. We'll have that thing, and then we'll go through and figure out the impact from an estimates, but then we'll go out to bid again. And going out to bid again might be early next year, if lucky. Yeah, okay.
Okay. This is.
Randy, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I do. I just want to say that I agree with you and Steve that this is a business decision that you have to make. It's an uncomfortable one, right? Because their cost of receiving and treating the wastewater won't change that much, but they've got us by the short ones, and they're going to do what they're going to do. I think we need to be cautious that we move forward in such a way that we don't let that happen again. So perhaps some limitation on the fact that they can't keep changing the ground rules would be a pretty good idea. But that's where I'm coming from. But right now, that's a business decision we have to make.
So I would like to call a motion to
One
accept
other
this.
question, are there any increases built into this? Do they have a clause for that?
The original agreement with New London, there's a capital expenses,
Yes, I remember that.
but there's no escalation. Originally, the original offer was that they can change the agreement and how much we pay every year without any kind of reference.
Yeah.
So they released that agreement. So the agreement that we agreed to in the past has not changed other than this additional buy-in and the finance amount. And what it is this is the buy-in amount. The components are the buy-in amount, the amounts that we send them for effluent, which is a rate on that. And then there's a capital expense of equipment that they spend, our percentage of their total volume. So our 50,000 gallons divided by their 10 million gallons. It becomes an very small amount times whatever capital equipment that they do. So
Is there a motion?
Well, I'd like to make a motion, someone to make a motion that says we can accept this, a proposed amending of the New London IMA, but I don't say this. Technically, someone else should say it, but I'm feeding you a little bit. Sorry, you have your hand up, Steve?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the presented revised IMA agreement with the city of London that extends our buy-in period for 5 years.
I second that.
Randy seconded, was quicker than Dimitri. All, discussion, anyone? Any comments, concerns?
I have one other comment.
Yeah,
Thank you for working through this. You've done a lot of work getting this to where it is, and it must have been pretty aggravating too.
I completely agree.
I used to have red hair before this. It's all gray now. Well, it was challenging and it's still challenging because, you know, the other beach associations have to also sign off,
Yeah.
to do this, and you get a lot of cooks in the kitchen. There's a lot of discussion. And they're in the same boat that we are. They don't like it, but they agree with it. So, any other comments, questions, concerns before we call for vote? Okay. All those in favor, raise your hand. Randy, how do you vote? Yes or no?
Yes,
So let the record show that everyone in the office here said yes, and Randy said yes, unanimous, motion carried. I think that is all on this subject of additional grants and funding and issues. Let me just make sure I go through my notes here. Okay, so the next thing is correspondence. The correspondence we had, I sent to the WPCA members ahead of time with a summary. We've already talked about the deep request to confirm status before giving money, which is all the forms that we have to fill out. The Wood and Current project option research, where they're giving us some updated operation costs. Wood and Current's project costs for the proposed affordability, their ideas. And the deep additional funding form for the givable loan details. And we had one request from Mrs. Daly about clarification about the IMAs between us and the town, and between us and New London, and between us and East Lyme, and between the private beach associations and before. Any questions about the correspondence? Any details you want to guys go over? I think I wore everybody out. Everyone looks pretty tired. Okay, moving on from correspondence to new business. Any new business WPCA members want to bring up? Not hearing any, we'll move on to public comment. If you've done this before, what we ask you to do, since there's one person in the room, we'd ask you to say your name and we'll recognize you, and we prefer that it be about WPCA business. We'll take your comments at the end of the public comment session. We may or may not respond depending on what the comments are. So would anyone from the public like to make a public comment? I'm gonna try and send, I think everyone can unmute themselves, but I'm gonna send a request to people just in case they can't unmute themselves. Would anyone like to make a public comment?
I would, Mr. Chairman. It's Brian Cornell.
Brian, you're recognized. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What a meeting. The rework of affordability or not is very confusing. And I understand that the town of Old Lyme is reworking the affordability of the project, and like in magic, somehow I just know the town of Old Lyme's got to come up with a number that makes things look affordable, which I think is ridiculous, especially when the project is on the backs of the citizens, at least, in the Soundview area. And second of all, and then I'll get out of your way, Mr. Chairman, you should all be ashamed that you just approved that IMA extension and new numbers that go along with it. I think we're being held hostage, and I think you've fallen for their trick. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Anyone else like to make a public comment?
Okay, this is Mary Daly. Good morning, good afternoon, evening.
Mary, you're recognized. Go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, going back to Carmody, I just want to state today, I was looking at a few things in Wind River Environmentals. They don't kind of agree with your ordinance. They seem to think that the best method going forward is to have yearly inspections of tanks to see clogs, etc. But that pumping should be determined based on what is in the tank and the size of the tank, not a set 7-year policy. They actually recommend 3 to 5, which is what most of our neighboring towns recommend. But they say that there's a good amount of sludge that should remain in the tanks, and in order to treat the bacteria, the new bacteria coming into the tanks. It's all on their website, and I recommend that this committee, since they're making these kind of important decisions, do their research and look at what's happening, what the experts are actually saying. The second thing I'd like to talk about, just give me a minute. You know, I also had a little bit of time and I looked at what was happening out on a wider spectrum outside of Old Lyme. And on the federal level, the federal EPA program to date has provided over $7 billion to states in need of assistance to decentralize waste treatments, because let's face it, the centralized waste treatments are the biggest offenders. They're failing, they're recorded, DEEP knows it, we all know it, it's all public information now. At this point, all 52 states have applied and received grants, not forgivable loans, whatever that means, but grants to pursue green alternatives versus sewering. And in Connecticut, the EPA has funded many of our neighbors already, but also 18 projects in Connecticut, 17, I'm sorry. We're hoping that Old Lyme might be the 18th. They have already funded 33 projects in Massachusetts and 88 projects in New York, which New York seems to be a much major offender of the Long Island Sound than Old Lyme, if you take the time to look at the reports that the Department of Health issues on a weekly basis. So we're still hoping that there will be a turnaround here and that Old Lyme will be the 18th partner with EPA for green alternatives. And we ask you why you do not consider that at all, especially now since you are struggling with the cost of sewering, which you know is not affordable. Things have changed so much in 15 years since this project began and has dragged on. And until our town representatives push back and say, no, we want to go with the state-of-the-art green technology, not old grinder pipes, not antiquated systems that have a long history of breakage, then we are not going forward. The IMA between New London and Old Lyme expired. It's void. I think you told us today there's a $10,000 deposit that we would lose. That seems like small potatoes when you look at the big picture here. I assume that any new documents would have to have the approval of not the treasurer of the Old Lyme WPCA, but hopefully the finance department and the selectman's office as well, because these are major decisions that will impact so many people for the rest of the time that they have owned property in Old Lyme. I also understand a few other things. You did admit that there was a substantial interest rate and also a substantial volume rate increase, and that is only good for 5 years. I hope that everybody on this panel realizes 5 years is not a very long time. And as you say, once you connect, as you continue down this road, they will have you by the tail, as Randy Nixon said. You will not be able to get out, but right now you can. So we are still hoping, it is our hope in Soundview, that we retain autonomy, that we go green, not old technology, and that we do not move forward with this new agreement, this IMA. You do not know today if this project will go forward. You do not know where the money will come from. You only have 60% of the design. It's almost ridiculous, almost really scary that you would sign or recommend to the selectmen to sign an additional IMA at all, or any other contracts at this point, until you have all the facts that you need to make an intelligent decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Anyone else like to make a public comment? Yes,
Dennis Maluzzo,
Dennis, you're recognized.
two things. We just had a presentation of the IMA that we were showing ready for, and we missed the target. Cost us more money. Cost us more money in the long run. My question is, two questions really. Who did the bidding for the town hall line with? Was it a town official? Was it a member of the WPCA? Or was it some other person? And if that other person's name is available, I'd like to know who it is. And if it's not available, I will be requesting it from FOIA. And if it is the person who I think it is, I think you've abdicated your responsibilities by asking a person who has direct financial benefit for sewers in Soundview to do the bidding for this town. And I would hope that it doesn't happen. And if it did happen, calling for your resignations. The IMA is just one structure. How many people in this room, besides myself, are affected by sewers? I only know 2 people. The rest of you doesn't. You, Mr. Premier, and voted yourself out of it. No one else lives on the shoreline here. That's a fact. Except us. And you'll find that this project is so unaffordable and so backwards that it'll never happen. And believe me, if you hold your hat with the representative from the Senate that did your bidding, it's going to be one and done. Because that person won't be here the next. That's all I have.
Thank you, Dennis. Anyone else want to make a public comment? I'm not hearing anyone. I hope that you're able to unmute yourself because it seems like other people are. If you're speaking, we're not hearing you. So I'm gonna close the public comment session. And I just remind or make a couple comments. We are legally obligated to put this sewer project in, period. We have to prove that it's not affordable. And we started that. We actually, 2015, we sent a letter to the state, said we're not doing this. And they sent a letter that we're gonna sue you. Paraphrasing. Old Shores did that recently, last year. And the state said, they said, I think the words were, we'll go from supportive to compliance or something like that. They basically suggested they were gonna force it. Then we presented the thing that it was not affordable. And then they offered us money to make it affordable. That's where we are now. It's irresponsible for us to just say, we're not gonna do it without going through the evidence that we need. Because it'll be hanging over our heads. The IMAs with New London and the other things that we do, it's not easy. We're doing what we think is best for the town. As far as negotiating, we have representatives that negotiate with New London and the beach associations. The first selectman is aware of all of this. Nothing gets signed unless it goes to this committee. So think of it as a draft or a verbal agreement. It's non-binding until signatures are put on. I don't know of any other way to do that. So anyways, I will stop commenting. Does any of WPCA members want to make a comment? Go ahead, Steve.
I do have a comment. We're a voluntary board that do the best we can in what we think is right. Calling us or asking us to be shameful is absolutely not necessary. And insinuating that some backroom deal is going on between our chair and New London, it's the same deal that the other beach associations got. So it's got to be a really big back room in order to get individual people that are looking out after their constituents' interests to agree to this. I've been involved in the process. I get the emails, I review them. Sometimes you don't like doing certain things in life, but in this case, there were two options for us to secure disposal of sewage through New London. Pay to the old agreement, which would cost us more than renegotiate a 5-year extension. So given those two options, or to say, we're going to give up the right to dispose of our sewage in London and then get sued by the state for not proceeding. There's no easy answer here. I'm sorry you're upset with having a sewer project that the state is demanding us put in. All we're doing is trying to do it as cheaply and as efficiently as possible.
Thank you, Steve. Any other comments? Okay, I think we've had a good meeting. It was a long meeting, and I know people are tired. I call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, Randy seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion accepted. Meeting's over. Have a good night. Stay safe, everybody. Take care. Bye.
Oh, you meant.